I'm only 80 years old, so I have many years to do. I'm not an economist, so really I was at the beginning surprised because I'm coming from science and research, not from economy. And my father, my grandfather were physicians. So from an early age, I was interested in learning the basics, the fundamentals of medicine, which is biochemistry. This is the basis of all the medical and healthy processes that go in our body. So I went to study biochemistry. I also promised my mother that I'm going to learn how to extend, how to prolong life. And really anti-aging or whatever you call it is very important. Everyone is interested in it. And for 50 years or more, we are trying to extend or to slow down the processes of aging. And this will prolong life. And with aging come all of us know, there are many diseases that are part of aging actually. I mean, even high blood pressure, cholesterol, diabetes, Alzheimer, Parkinson, even problems in vision, in hearing, many. And they are part of the aging process. So if we will succeed, and I'm sure that in this university people work in this direction also, if we will succeed to find ways to slow down the aging processes, at the same time we will also delay for many years the diseases that come with aging. So this is, I think, the main target or strategy that we have, that I had from the time I studied biochemistry. I studied biochemistry in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. There was no biochemistry department here. And my boss in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, he received the department here. But he told me he wanted me to come back to come with him to the biochemistry department here. But he told me first you have to go to the United States and study, get your PhD, and then you come and be with me. Unfortunately, while I was in the United States, he died in a car accident. My background, I told you, I'm in chemistry. When I graduated, I also worked in medicinal herbs, pharmacognosy in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. We researched the plants of the Negev. After this, I was invited to Harvard, and I worked with Professor George Wald, who received the Nobel Prize for finding the connection between vitamin A and night vision, eye blindness. So I worked with him 1 year, and we did, I was they call it a teaching fellow in biology, but we did research in basic biochemistry. But I found out that biochemistry is not enough to develop medicines, and I was only interested in developing medicine, nothing else. And I understood that I have to study more pharmacology, physiology, anatomy, many other subjects that we didn't study. So I found a program in UC Medical Center, San Francisco, in the School of Pharmacy, where they had a special program, curriculum, supported by the NIH. It was an experimental curriculum where we studied all these subjects, so I went there. I studied, got my doctorate, and I worked in research and developed eye drops to treat glaucoma. And this was the drug of choice for several years all over the world, not all over, in many countries. Later on, when I graduated, I was offered to stay as an assistant clinical professor at the University of California. But I decided to go home. And my wife and I and a baby daughter, she's here somewhere. Okay. We went back home. I was offered jobs in the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, biochemistry, pharmacognosy, but I decided to try and form our own research laboratory. We had $5,000 and we felt very rich, and we were young and not afraid to take risks, and we decided to give it 2 years. I convinced my wife to agree for 2 years, and after 2 years, if we fail, both of us had professions, and we could find jobs, and we can be employed somewhere. So we started, although most of our friends predicted that we'll fail, and of course this was a possibility. Some people tell me now that it was a startup. I think this world did not exist then. I didn't know that we are. Yeah. So we started the laboratory. We rented a place of 100 square meters for $115 a month in Bnei Brak and started to work. I developed, since I didn't have money to buy equipment for making injections or tablets or so, and since my two professors in California and in Harvard were specialists in eye and skin medicine, so I started with this. I developed products. My wife worked with me. She was in the administrative, she was the administrator actually. She studied in Jerusalem literature and Bible. And there she became she studied to be a lab technician in America, and she worked in a clinical laboratory. So she did the quality control. She didn't know the border that I meant only control in the factory, not control at home. But okay, so I developed products, and I went to the big pharmaceutical companies and tried to offer it to them, so they will manufacture, they will sell, and I'll get royalties or sell to them. But no one was interested in my products. So we had no choice. The girl there, when she was 2 or 3 years old, she wanted to eat, and I had to go and manufacture and sell. So I manufactured 1 day a week until 2 o'clock, because anyway, no one was interested and no one was wanted to buy or use our products. The rest of the week I worked in product development and in visiting doctors and pharmacies, trying to convince them to use our products. It took about two years before we broke even. And in the first 2 years, my wife was also the chief accountant. She was the chief accountant, but there was no account, nothing. So after this, we added and we added. I developed personally over 30 eye drops, over 30. This was about 50 years ago. In 1965 we started, and I think I was 2 days ago. I was in the opening of the what do we call it? Drug development laboratory. I saw all these robots and computers, and I was really shocked. I've never seen something like this, and I know that what I did 50 years ago was very primitive compared to this. But we cured or we treated millions of eyes since then. Since even now, ophthalmologists, if you look at their treatment table, you'll see some of our products still now, 50 years. So these robots and computers, they still have to prove themselves. Because we treated millions of people. Many of our products that we developed are unique, not many. Some of them are unique. We specialize in sun protection. Unique to the Israeli weathering conditions. And we specialize in sun protection, for example, in which we are 70% or more of the Israeli market, but we are also with some developments, inventions in which we are the first in the world. Also in other fields. We also manufacture, develop some product for Africa. For example, for river blindness. This is a disease that about, when we did it, Professor Lazar and I think 10 million Africans were blind from this. This is a fly, a fly, not a mosquito, fly that spreads filaria, small worms, into the skin. Some of them get, 1/3 of the cases, they get into the eye, and people get blind from this. So we developed eye drops for this to kill the filaria in the eye. And now, I don't want to bother you with 50 years of manufacturing successes and failures. I think more failures than successes, but finally, we are about 1,000 people around us, and we are one of the biggest private manufacturing companies in Israel. We have about 1,000 people, Arabs, Jews, Muslims, Christians, Circassians, Tzadal, former soldiers of southern Lebanon. We employ also some people with special needs, like deaf or some mental problems. We export to over 30, like Professor Klafter said, over 30 countries. We operate 3 factories, 2 in the Galil and 1 in Bnei Brak, not far from here. I think we are in every home in Israel, every hospital. The army is using our products. We are also selling a lot in the Arab territories, in the West Bank mainly, a little in Gaza also. A few years ago, I published my autobiography. It's there. If someone wants to take it, there are a few books there. I asked to bring them, and everyone, if someone is interested in more details, can take the books. I published my autobiography, and they interviewed me on the media, and in one of the TV interviews, they asked me, with all the subjects that you and your wife studied, which one was the most important one? She studied Bible, literature, and lab technician, and I told you what I studied. So I told them that what she studied, Bible, because we had to pray a lot at the beginning. Which is true. Something which I'm not so happy now, to run a factory in Israel is very difficult, very difficult. In addition to all the hardships and problems that any industry in the world has, we have 2 more problems. One, problematic bureaucracy, and the other is the wars. And I'm afraid that we have to get ready for possible and more wars. So lately the World Bank published a rating of the countries according to the ease of doing business in them. We came 35 in this year. 53. We are number 53. In other words, in 52 countries, it's easier to do business than in Israel. In 2006, we were rated 26. So we deteriorated from 26 to 53. And very few, there are here industrialists, very few companies, if any, manufacturing companies were started in Israel in the last few years. Very few, if any. And many closed, and some moved to other countries. And I'm not talking about China, also Europe and the United States. Another thing is the wars, of course. We have a factory in the Galil, and in the war of 2006 with Lebanon, a Katyusha rocket fell into our factory and destroyed half of it. Oh. And they add to the rocket thousands of small metal balls, ball bearings, and which spread all over to kill and to injure as many as possible. But we were lucky; no one was injured, no one was killed, because it was on Saturday and we don't work on Shabbat. So these are some. So some people may say, so what if we don't have industry? We can import everything. Everything can be imported. Okay, so if we import, we don't have export. Israel depends on export. The economy of Israel, now I'm talking about economy, although I don't understand it. Israel depends on export. Export, you need industry. You cannot export without industry. So if we will not have export, we will not have economy, and we will not have independent Israel. Another thing, what about employment? Even our factory, around us, if we close 1,000 families, we look for another, for making a living. They will be unemployed. And what about the wars? During wars, aeroplanes don't come, ships don't come. It's dangerous. So we supply the army during the wars. In the second day of Yom Kippur War, we started to manufacture Polydin. This is a product that helped to save many injured, especially burned soldiers. And we didn't have a license from the Ministry of Health. We need a license ahead of time, but I said, let's manufacture it because they need it, and we supplied it to the hospitals. And I called the Ministry of Health and told them, Dr. Brod, who was the head of the pharmaceutical department, that we don't have a license, but I'm telling you that now I'm going to manufacture. So he said, we'll hang you, nitle otcha, after the war. So I said, thank you very much. And this was the license we received to manufacture it. 2 months later, we received also a piece of paper about it. Now, I want to talk about the social activities. Social activities are an integral part of our company. first of all, the families that are working with us. Second, we are very active in the ילדים, המועצה לילד החוסה, ילדים בסיכוי. This is about 10,000 children who were taken out of broken homes or where there was cruelty against the children, and there are institutes, and there is a non-profit organization that takes care of them, and we are very active there. We are my daughters. And Dr. Barel, you said that I'm lucky. I have 2 daughters who work with me. It's not true. It's not true. They fired me. It's not the same. But they are the ones who are active. And we have all these hundreds of people, and we have we are half socialistic, democratic, and people, all the hundreds of people are doing the work, and I don't want all the burden to be on them, so we divide it. They do the work, I take the credit. And that's how it is. We have also, we run a gallery, which we call a social gallery in Tel Aviv, in the Zohar House, where every 2 months we replace the exhibition, not our pictures, from different artists, and we work every 2 months with another non-profit organization, invalids, autists, and so on, and the pictures that are sold, the money that is sold, that is gained from selling the pictures, goes, all of it, to the non-profit organization with whom we work. Also, the medical missions of Israel are going all over the world when there is a catastrophe. Nepal, Philippines, Hawaii, Turkey, Africa, we donate products to them, and some life-saving, some for treatment. But every mission goes out with our products. So that's it. Now I want to summarize, to end, talking about the future. Of course, medicine will change. All of us, you in the university know more than me about the changes that will be, more prevention than treatment of diseases. Even now, if you treat a disease, there are chances that you failed or neglected the prevention. So medicine will go more into prevention, more into personal treatment, based on genetics. And there will be many other things that will happen that we don't know about them. We don't know yet, and we must be ready to adapt them when they come. Some will come from the university, from this robot, from everything, and some from other places. But our mind should be very flexible and ready to adapt other things, new things, and they will come. They will surprise us. We don't know what will. It's like in the past, that many technological things came in surprise, the telephones and everything. Now, about the future, one thing that is very, very problematic is the boycott. And I have to talk about this. Everyone talks about BDS, but I think we are doing for them public relations. BDS exists only 10 years, this organization. It's a strong organization. I think it's financed by the Arab countries, but it's only 10 years. They are not everything. There was a boycott before, and there will be a boycott after. And also they are some. And you know about, I don't have to tell you about the academic boycott. I don't have to tell you about the students that demonstrate against us in campuses more and more. And these students will manage they'll manage the universities in a few years. And the economy also, the world economy. And they will not become Zionists. They will be against us, these students. Also, there are official and non-official boycott. The official, the European Parliament was it, who decided to label products from the West Bank. We as Jews, we remember what it means to label Jewish businesses and Jewish products. This means don't touch them, don't come close to them. Lately, the United Nations Human Rights Organization decided to make a list of all the companies that work with the West Bank, or what they call the occupied territories. The list, those who sell to them, those who buy to them, and those who finance. And there are many organizations or banks in Scandinavia and other places who boycott the Israeli banks because they finance the settlements on the West Bank. So it is growing, and it's frightening to some people. But I think that the boycotters, and there are some people who boycott us without the organization. You can decide. I mean, a city in the United States, I don't remember, in New York State, I think, decided not allow to boycott, to make it illegal, to make it illegal. But if someone doesn't want to work with Israel, how can they force him? He doesn't have to declare it. He just cannot, does not work with Israel, doesn't buy from Israel and so on. But I think that the boycotters are the minority of the world. They are not the majority, but they are the ones who are the noisiest ones. Most of the world is either with us or indifferent. And I think we should work with them. And I read in the paper that the government allocated this week, or 100 billion shekels to fight the boycott. But many of the people who deal with it, they fight the boycott head on. And I think it will be very difficult, if possible at all, to change the minds of those who decided to boycott us. But we have all the others, and the money and the time and the effort should be with the others, with the majority of the world. About 3 years ago, I was in the convention of the evangelists in Nashville, Tennessee, and I told them, you know, and there are how many, I don't know how many millions are for us. I told them, they boycott us, let us boycott us, B-U-Y. You boycott us, buy only products. This is not a donation. Donation is donation. But buy good products, and products that you need, and at good price. I mean, they compete with other products. And then you can overcome the boycott because you are many. And there are many other actions that we can take in order to fight the boycott. But we cannot, I think it's a waste of time and money to start to fight them head on. To summarize, I'm very optimistic about the Israeli economy in the future, on condition that we will act, and the sooner the better. Thank you.
Thank you a lot, Dr. Eli Fisher, for sharing with us your vision and your experience. It's really worthwhile. Now I'm going to call on Professor Klafter and Dr. Monique Barrell to present the Hugo and Valery Rameshian Scholarship to Anna Lerman. And I'm going to call to Anna Lerman too.